Therapy with Survivors of Narcissistic Abuse. Part 3. The Client's Pathogenic Beliefs. Why would someone get anxious the more successful they get? Is fear of success something to take seriously in treatment? And what sorts of internal compromises do children of narcissistic parents have to make? Well, the answer to all of these questions from the perspective of control mastery theory point to pathogenic beliefs. In today's video, I'm going to explain how and why someone might come to adopt a pathogenic belief, the functions that the beliefs may serve for the child of an emotionally compromised parent, and how you as a therapist or helping professional can infer which beliefs your client might want help freeing themselves of in therapy with you. Well, this video is the third in a series on control mastery theory and how you can apply it in your own clinical work. It's a 6-part series that covers these topics. Part 1 was an overview of control mastery theory. Part 2 covered the client's goals. Today we're going to cover Part 3, the client's pathogenic beliefs. Part 4 is the client's key traumas. Part 5 are how clients may test pathogenic beliefs, and Part 6 are 5 steps towards case formulation. Well, my name is Jay Reed, and I'm a licensed psychotherapist in California, and I specialize in the treatment of survivors of narcissistic abuse. I work from a form of therapy called control mastery theory, which prizes the client's efforts to overcome the trauma of narcissistic abuse and realize a fuller and richer quality of life for themselves. If that topic interests you, then I encourage you to learn more by getting my free ebook on the subject, and it's titled Effective Therapy with Survivors of Narcissistic Abuse, The Basics of Control Mastery Theory. You can get the link to the book in the description box below or by clicking here. So why do pathogenic beliefs develop? Well, in short, when a child's developmental goals seem to conflict with the relationship to a parent, then that child will have to be the one to compromise, and this is where pathogenic beliefs come in. A pathogenic belief is a rule, essentially, that tells the child terrible dangers will ensue if the child pursues a developmental goal. For example, in the case of Sarah that I have introduced and described in the prior videos, in the series, she's learned that if she paid more attention to herself than towards her father, that he would collapse into a depression and be unavailable to her. Since paying attention to oneself is a developmentally appropriate process for a child and adolescents, she had to find a way to surrender this developmental goal or process. By adopting the pathogenic belief or rule that if she didn't take responsibility for others' emotional well-being, they would then sink into depression, she adapted to her situation in a way that preserved her father as a viable parent to her. That is, in her view, her father was not problematic. Her job was to keep him from falling into depression. So if he did, then that was essentially her fault, not her father's. And it's that transfer of accountability, also called parent laundering, that is so critical for a child to do in the kinds of situations that Sarah faced, because it's more important for the child to believe they have a parent who's out there and able and willing to care for them than it is to at times have an accurate understanding of their parent. If she had not adapted in this way and paid more attention to herself than her father, then she could have courted the trauma of his not being there at all for her. And for a child, a parent's absence, whether emotional or physical, feels much worse than not being able to pursue a developmental goal or engage in an important developmental process. Children are too psychologically, emotionally, sometimes physically, early in life, dependent on a parent to let that relationship to the parent not matter. And I don't mean to imply that Sarah, as a young girl, literally thought to herself, Dad will fall into depression if I don't cheer him up. Control mastery theory talks about pathogenic beliefs in ways that lay out the logic of the child's adaptation in a situation like Sarah's. And of course, that may be more useful to the therapist than the client to articulate pathogenic beliefs like this. It can be useful for the therapist to know that articulating a pathogenic belief is a way of capturing the cognitive, emotional, and behavioral responses enacted by a child to cope with the stress brought on by having a psychologically and emotionally compromised parent. How can you infer a client's pathogenic beliefs? Well, a client's pathogenic beliefs can be identified by thinking about their goals for treatment, the thwarted developmental aims these goals may reflect, the kinds of traumas experienced by this client earlier in life, and I'll go into depth on those traumas in the next video in this series, and finally, to think about your own sense of and experience of the client. If you can determine what kinds of developmental goals the client seems to have had to give up, then you can begin to think about what sorts of internal rules or beliefs may be in play that convinced the client that those goals must be given up. Then you can couple these sorts of thoughts with an understanding of the kinds of adversity or trauma the client may have faced in their early relationships that could have further convinced the child to abandon their own development. Finally, you can use your own sense of the client. For example, does this client seem comfortable and entitled to know and express anger? Do they have an appropriate sense of entitlement to others' respect, others' interest, and their attention? Does a client expect that their feelings can and should be understandable and that they can be usefully responded to? These kinds of questions can help you determine what sorts of experiences or potentials may be missing for this particular client. As you determine what feels to be missing, this can also inform what sort of pathogenic belief may be in play. Well, in my clinical practice, I help myself understand a client's potential pathogenic beliefs by asking them to endorse a scale of pathogenic beliefs. It's called the Pathogenic Belief Scale. To give you an idea of what sorts of pathogenic beliefs are commonly seen in clinical practice, I've listed the top 6 endorsed pathogenic beliefs from my practice, and these are from 190 clients over about 5 years. So here they are. The first pathogenic belief is, I fear being a burden if I ask people for help. Second, I fear hurting others' feelings if I express anger. If others feel bad, I'm going to help, even if it means personal disadvantages. I'm afraid of being rejected if I ask too much from others. If I succeed at work or in private life, I usually play down my achievements. And I fear to be rejected if I make mistakes. Well, I hope today's video has given you a good understanding of how pathogenic beliefs function in the kind of psychological life of clients. And in the next video, I'm going to talk about the sorts of circumstances that lead to pathogenic beliefs. These are called key traumas.